Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for joining us. My name is Alicia Barrett. I do wine education at Binny's, and I'm honored to be accompanied by Doug Shafer of Napa Valley today. And Doug is a very good friend of Binny's. So Doug, we're thrilled that you're here. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, Alicia. Great to be here.
So we have a lot to cover tonight. We're going to get into your Chicago roots and what life has been like out there in California since that move. We, obviously miss you here. But before we do that, I think you have a few slides for us to kind of transport us to your winery and share a little bit about how it got started and what we can expect in your wines.
Okay, thanks, Alicia. Let me get this going here.
And while Doug pulls that up on the screen, please do, as I said, go ahead and pour yourself a glass of the Chardonnay. And if you have any questions tonight, please put those in the chat function or the Q&A function. I'll go ahead and check those on Zoom, all right? That looks great, Doug.
You got it? Okay. Well, first of all, you guys, there's no rules here today. I believe you've got 3 wines in front of you, Schafer wines. You do not have to wait for me to get permission to try them. So feel free to smell and taste and imbibe and make some notes if you want. I'll talk about them later on. You guys can ask me questions if you want. And if you run out of those 3 Schafer wines, you need to open something else, go for it. So, it doesn't bother me. I can't see what you're doing. And even if I could, I'd probably really want some of that wine too. So, so off we go. So this is our place out in the Stags Leap district of the Napa Valley. That's the winery surrounded by the hillside vineyards. Andy, this thing's not working. It didn't. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, it's working that way. Okay, thanks. So most of you know where Napa Valley is. It's about 60 miles north of San Francisco as the crow flies, and we're in the Stags Leap district, which is a sub-appellation right about halfway between Napa and Calistoga. Napa to the south, Calistoga to the south, or to the north. We're right on the Silverado Trail. Close up, Yountville is right here. That's the French Laundry. Lots of restaurants in Yountville. We're right across the valley, 2 miles away. Stags Leap is about a mile wide, 2 miles long. It's a fairly small appellation, well known for Cabernet Bordeaux varietals. Here's an aerial shot above our winery looking south towards San Francisco and then Napa in the foreground. But here's the winery right here, surrounded by our hillside vineyards. And you can see this, it's like a small valley within the larger Napa Valley. So if you go to the right over here, right of these hills, you've got another 1.5 miles or 2 to the other side of Napa Valley. So this is like a small valley within the Napa Valley. Stags Leap district. That's our spot. And this is Battista Scansi in 1922, and exactly, and he's right in where I grow some great Cabernet, and the winery is the new one. Our existing winery is right behind him over here. So, and the tops of these hillsides still look the same. I've hiked up there all the time, and it still looks just like that. 1922, God, almost 100 years ago. I have to do a special Battista Scansi bottling here coming up.
Just so long as Binny's get some.
Say it again.
Just so long as you send a few bottles Binny's way.
Of course, I think it'll be an exclusive. I'll talk to Barbara about that. So here's the guy. This is John Shafer. He grew up in Glencoe, New Trier High School. Went to Cornell. Was at Cornell for a year, then joined the Army Air Corps. And he flew B-24 bombers in World War II. Came back, was working as an engineer in Cleveland. Then he started working for a company called Scott Forsman, based in Chicago, then in Glenview. There was a book publishing company, Sally, Dick, and Jane textbooks. Started out as a salesman for them, worked his way up to VP of long range planning. And that's where he discovered the wine business. Not because he loved wine. He discovered the pending wine boom in California. This is in the early 70s. He kept reading articles about it. So he said, I got to check this out. So he came out to California, Central Coast. Some guys said, you want wine grapes, you should go up to Napa. He said, where's Napa? He found Napa, found this place that we live at now, or we work at here. It was an abandoned 60-year-old vineyard, 30 acres, Zinfandel, Carignan, Chenin Blanc, just field blend stuff. Old house, funky barn, and he bought it. And because it had hillside potential, and he had this wild, crazy idea of growing hillside grapes. Now, you've got to remember, this guy was not a wine connoisseur. So we grew up in Hinsdale. This is right by the garage in my boyhood home in Hinsdale, this picture. And no wine in the house. If there was wine, it was like Matus or Lance or something like that. He was a bourbon and beer guy, without a doubt. So, he bought the place, was going to be an absentee landowner. Within a year, he said, let's go now. So at age 47, he moved us out here to Napa. I was 17, middle of my junior year at Hinsdale Central, and off I went to California. In the 70s, he replanted our vineyards, started planting some hillside grapes. The first hillside vineyard was a vineyard called the Upper Seven, which he had a partial crop in 77, and in 78, he had enough to make 1,000 cases. He had a custom crush to another facility because he didn't have a winery at that time. But this wine, 78 Cab, is the granddaddy to Hillside Select. It was released in 1981, and the price point was $11 a bottle, which was actually considered fairly high. And he would come back to Chicago to sell wine. He'd be out in suburban areas, different liquor stores, and talking to the wine guy and said, hey, do any of my neighbors come in? He goes, oh yeah, the guy, yeah, you got neighbors. They all come in, they want to see John Schafer's wine. They go back and they look at it, they pick up the bottle and they look at the price tag and they put the bottle back on the shelf and they go down and buy a couple of half gallons of vodka and bourbon and head out the door. So that was that. Here's an early shot of Dad in the vineyard. That's an old International Harvester TD9 tractor, which we named a wine after. Alfonso and his kid. That little kid is a part of the Napa police force these days. It's good to have a friend in the police business. Picking some hillside cab. What was my story? So I finished high school here, went to UC Davis, did the whole viticulture enology thing. Ended up teaching school in Tucson for a couple of years. Then came back to the Napa, worked in 2 or 3 wineries in the cellar, and then joined Dad as winemaker in 1983. And I think that's about when this picture was taken. Another shot in the cellar. And then in 84, I needed a cellar rat. Basically, I needed someone to help me out in the winery. So I put an ad up at UC Davis. And this kid answered. The job title was assistant winemaker. That's what you do. You give him a really good title, even though it's a real grunt job. And this kid answered. And we're interviewing, and he took the same classes I did at UC Davis, but 5 years behind me. And basically, he got a lot better grades than I did. So I hired him on the spot. His name was and is Elias Fernandez. He's still here. He's finishing bottling TD9, the 2019 TD9 today, his last day of bottling. It's been a 7-day run. So we've been making wine together over 35, 36 years. Great guy. Another beauty shot. This is looking west towards the hills, across the Napa Valley. On the other side of those hills is Sonoma, and then on to the Pacific Ocean, obviously. And if you come to Schafer, you can fall in love. I love this slide. Who took this slide? I don't know who took it, but I keep this one in there. Another overhead shot, basically showing our ponds. The pond in the foreground is our wastewater pond. So all the water we use in the cellar is recycled to irrigate the vineyards. And this big pond right here gets fed from a creek. This creek over here on the left is a big watershed behind us in the hills. We've got a pipe that basically fills that thing every rainy season. It's great. Solar powered, 100% solar powered since 2004, which is wonderful. That's how it looks today. This is before. We're still the rainy season. Everything's green, hasn't dried out yet. In a couple months, the rain will stop and we'll have brown hills. But it's a real pretty time right now if you want to come to. And pretty soon you guys can come to Napa. We'll see. Down south at the bottom of the screen, that's the north part of the San Francisco Bay. Red Shoulder Ranch, where we grow Chardonnays down here in Carnero. So good 20 or 30 miles away from the winery, which is up here in Stag's Leap. But our different vineyards are here at the home ranch, a vineyard called Borderline, School Bus, La Mesa, Ridgeback. About 220 acres of grapes that we control, which is wonderful. Another shot looking right up the Stag's Leap district. This is looking from the south to the north. So these are the eastern hills. Here's this valley within the valley, and the winery's right up here where my cursor is. I don't know if you can see it. That's the winery surrounded by our hillside vineyards. And our spot, our home ranch, it's kind of like a box canyon because of the way the land kind of is shaped. So we have these hillside cab blocks, which have south, southwest, and west exposures. Super, just wonderful for great ripening every year. Another aerial shots. We pick everything at night these days. Guys love it because it's nice and cool. They don't, they're not out there in 100-degree sun. We in the cellar love it because we get fruit showing up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, even before we get here. And it's nice and cool and stays cool, which is super, super good for quality. We light it up like it's daytime out there. It's pretty cool. Crush pad, a lot going on here. Starting in the upper right, grapes are getting dumped out of this white bin into this table where Elias is standing. It's a shaker table. It shakes the grapes down to this conveyor belt. That's rolling. These guys are sorting out anything we don't want in the tank, leaves, dirt clods, things like that might get in there. And then the grapes fall into these two machines right here, these two blue machines. Those are destemmers. So the grapes get destemmed, and then the stems go away, underground conveyor out to a truck. And then the grapes actually drop down on the other side of the machine, and they end up way over here on the left. You see this table, and those are just the berries, which I'm going to show you another picture of in a second. So here's a flip side, the same setup, and here's where the grapes are dropping out of the destemmers onto this shaker table, and the grapes are coming down here, and they hit this machine. This looks like Star Wars, R2-D2. This is an optical sorter. You might have heard of these. We first got it in 2011. We're on our second one already. It's the coolest thing ever. Basically, it's a computerized instant photography machine. It takes a picture of everything going across a certain plane, and if you program it, if it's a raisin, a leaf, a stem, you can program it for the machine to basically spit it out. And it does so with little air jets that trigger when it sees the thing you don't want. And so all the rejects are coming into this bin right here where I'm standing. And the good grapes go up this little mini conveyor and fall into this dumpster. I'm over on the right here, in this little bin where there's two rubber rollers that basically crushes the grapes as they fall through it. And then down here, this big hose, that's where the must, the red must, is being pumped. So the must is juice, skins, and seeds getting pumped into a tank to ferment. Here's the good stuff, okay? Isn't that great? That goes in the tank. I mean, how could you not make good wine out of that? I mean, really, it's gorgeous. Because if you compare it to the bad stuff, here's the bad stuff. Raisins, stems, these little green shot berries, those are berries that didn't mature, but they're inside the cluster. And if those got in the tank and they break open with heat and alcohol during fermentation, they're going to give you some really bitter flavors. So we get rid of those. It's great. Now, in the old days, when I was a winemaker, we didn't have the optical sorter. So all this junk went in the tank too. So I had to figure out how to make good wine out of it. So I did all right, but Elias is making a lot better wine now. Even without the optical sorter, he does. So that's the bad stuff. After fermentation, we obviously age the wine in barrels. We've got a beautiful barrel room. We have a cave, which is cool, really nice. Don't have to cool it. And we got the team. It's Elias and me. That was only taken, what was that, 4 or 5 years ago?
2016.
2016, really? The gray hair has come on like a bandit. Must be a COVID thing. Anyway, and that's Cody. He's the head dog. And then we've got the guys, the sheep, and the sheep just showed up today. The sheep right now, day one is the sheep. So if you were here at Schafer in our vineyard, you would see the sheep. They just showed up today. We bring them in every spring, right around this time of year, right before the grapes start growing, to eat the grass, mow it down. That saves us from dragging a tractor through there to mow it down and wasting fuel and compacting the soil. We bring the sheep in for a couple weeks. There's like 200 of them. They mow all the grass. There's usually 6 or 7 babies born in a 2-week period. They're just adorable. And then they take them away. And last year, right about now, as we all know, things were getting shut down. And my pal Andy here had a great idea. We shot 6 hours of sheep grazing in our vineyards. You know, and you've got ba, ba, you got the birds singing, and 6 hours. And what we did was we put on YouTube, and people, like a fireplace on your TV in your apartment in New York, you know, just to give you some warmth and coziness, that big black screen. We did it with the sheep. And you go to YouTube and look up Schafer sheep. It's how many hits? 260,000 hits on Schafer sheep in the vineyard. So and the comments were great, because this was all coming down a year ago when everybody was shut inside. So if you need help getting to sleep, you can download the Schafer sheep. And that's the lineup. We've got the Chardonnay, 1.5 Cabernet, Hillside Select Cab, TD9, which is a blend of Cabernet, Merlot, and Malbec, and Relentless, a blend of Syrah and Petit Syrah. And that's it. I'm going to stop share. And there you go, Alicia.
Doug, you've done that before. That was.
Oh, no, really? Is it that obvious? Damn, only twice.
I just think you told the story so well, and in 15 minutes. So thank you for that. And we had some great comments of people that have been to Schafer and have just loved meeting you, loved the wines. Someone has commented that they have listened to the sheep. So yeah, everyone go check that out on the Schafer website. So let's actually get into the Chardonnay. I'm sure people are tasting along here, and I want to hear kind of your thoughts on this. But you know, unlike your Cabernet from Stag's Leap District, this is down in Carneros, which you showed us on the map from Red Shoulder Ranch that you purchased back in '88. Can you tell us a little bit about that decision-making process to go down to Carneros, where you mentioned it is cooler? Was that kind of an easy choice for you? What went into that?
It was really easy. So when we started making wine in the early '80s, there wasn't a lot of attention paid to, you know, planting the right grape in the right place. It was just like, go for it. And Dad, we have 50 acres here on the home ranch, and there was this one flat piece where we planted Chardonnay, because he said, I'm going to have a winery, I need to have a white wine. So I'll plant these 9 acres of Chardonnay. I'll plant some Merlot over here and some Cabernet here, and that was our home ranch. Mostly because, you know, he was a smart guy. He was, you know, got to have a white wine. And I remember we bought some grapes from Monticello, which is just a mile away on the center of the valley, right up here just north of Napa. And that was our Chardonnay program for a long time. And then I started hearing about this guy named Larry Hyde down in Carneros. He has some apparently great Chardonnay. So I sought him out, got to know him. He put me on a wait list because he was selling like 25 wineries. And within a couple of years, I was able to get 10 tons of Chardonnay from him. And at the time, people were talking about Carneros, cooler region, better for Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. That was starting to happen. And I got to tell you, we got this 10 tons in the first year from Larry Hyde, and it was like, fantastic. I mean, heads and tails above anything growing here, which is Stag's Leap, or, you know, a bit warmer climate. So that was the first signal. And at that point, that was in the mid '80s. So at that point, I started looking for land down there, because it's like, it's really obvious that I should be growing Chardonnay and Carneros, and I should be growing Cabernet on this home ranch, you know, which is the way it is. And we found this place and bought it in 1988. It was just a pasture land. It had not been vineyard. So we planted it. It's about 66 acres, put in a pond, because we rely on winter runoff, because wells down there are too close to the bay because the water is too salty. You know, too many just salt and other problems with it. Just it's the word, I can't think of the word. But anyway, so we grow Chardonnay down there, and small clustered clones, small berries, tons of flavor. We get it pretty ripe, make a big, rich Chardonnay. You know, the wines from Napa, we make big, rich wines here right across the board. What do I drink at home? I drink Chablis, man. I love it. I mean, if I could make a Chablis here at home, I'd be a really happy guy. But I can't. But I'm still pretty happy because I can buy Chablis. But every winemaker's got to do what makes sense for their place. And so that's what we do. So that's the red shoulder chard. Oh, sorry, I'm rambling. The other key with that is it's barrel fermented. 30% of the barrels are stainless steel, 70% are oak. It used to be 100% oak, but it was too much. The oak would just overtake it, especially after a couple of years. So we backed off the oak. The steel barrels keeps it livelier, fruitier. And the other thing we do, well, the other thing we don't do is malolactic fermentation, because malolactic fermentation in a Chardonnay or a white wine fattens up the mouth, but it drops the acid and it drops the fruit. I don't want to drop acid in fruit. So we avoid malolactic. That keeps it just perkier, zestier. So that's the recipe for the chard.
And has that approach with Malo been consistent since your first vintage, or did you play around with that, again, slightly lower acidity, creamier texture for a little bit?
Since 1980,
right.
No malolactic.
Right.
We get the creamy texture by aging on the lees and stirring the lees. That way we keep the acid up, but we get that creaminess by sur lie aging and stirring.
Well, it's an absolutely beautiful Chardonnay, and I mean, you don't need to be told that, but I think that stainless to oak balance really is dialed in, because it has so much freshness in the acidity, but still it's definitely Napa, you know, and still has the texture and weight that you hope for, and really well integrated oak. So
thank you.
Yeah,
and
beautiful
the
wine.
name, and the name Red Shoulder, I always forget to tell the story that it's named after the red shoulder hawks, because back in '89 I started doing a lot of sustainable agriculture, which the big part of that was growing cover crop, because lots of benefits from cover crop. The only negative is you get lots of gophers and moles. And if you've got an older vineyard, no problem. But if you've got a young vineyard, they eat the roots of the vines, kills the vines. So how to get rid of gophers and moles? Well, you can poison them. That's not very sustainable. So don't want to do that. You can use a gopher blaster, which is a tank of propane and oxygen hauled through the vineyard on a tractor with about a 3-foot metal rod. You give it 30 seconds of gas, and it's got a spark switch that blows it up and blows the ground up. Really cool. Big noise. 8-year-old birthday party for 10 little boys. I was the hit. And then somebody called my wife and said, "Were you guys blowing something up at the vineyard the other day?" Said, no. But it was dangerous. We got rid of that. And then I read an article, because I'm a farmer, so I read farm magazines. I read an article about raptors, basically hawks, you know, red shoulder hawks, red tail hawks. All they need is a place to hunt from. They just need perches. And these guys mow through gophers like there's no tomorrow. And then I discovered barn owls. And barn owls only come out at night. So we put up barn owl boxes. So they're working at night. Hawks are working during the day. So we love it. So we named the ranch the Red Shoulder Ranch to honor our flying buddies who keep the gophers down.
I love that. I mean, no work involved. It's truly you build it and they will come, right?
There you go. Look at this. Alicia, you should be in marketing. You are.
Well, I want to, let's transition now to your Cabernet. We're going to taste the 1.5 now. And, you know, you spoke about your dad and his move from the suburbs of Chicago to Napa Valley. And, you know, one of the things I was going to ask you is kind of if you recall what wine was on the table when you were younger back in Illinois. But, you know, you answered that and you said there wasn't any wine. And I find that's, you know, so interesting that yet he still uprooted his family and moved out there. So what an adventurous spirit and what courage he must have had. So, yeah, I just want to talk about your dad and maybe his influence on you, both in the winery and out, and, you know, maybe telling a little bit about the 1.5 name on this Cabernet too.
You bet. Yeah, it was a crazy time. I mean, we were, you guys all live in the Chicago area, Hinsdale, Oak Brook, Glencoe, Evanston. What a place to grow up. It was great. And it was we had the whole enchilada. I mean, you got the country club and and the great schools and the whole thing. And the social life there. And so when they made this decision, their friends were like, John and Beth Schafer have gone nuts. They've lost their minds. And, we moved out here, we rolled into this place, drove across the country in a country squire station wagon with the dog, my brother and dad and myself, and rolled into here. And it's like, and this dumpy little farmhouse. It's like, from this really nice home in Hinsdale. And it's like, wow, really? But meanwhile, it was really, really pretty, as you saw in the pictures. And it was crazy. But it was kind of cool. It was like we were all like in it together, like pioneers. And the first night we're all sleeping on the floor because the moving van hadn't come. And you're middle of the night, you hear coyotes and owls and stuff. It's like, holy crap, what's that? And then there's rattlesnakes running around during the day. Not a lot, but there. So it was just really different. But it was, the one thing I'll never forget is it really pulled my folks together. All of a sudden, the two of them were like, we're in this together, and we're going to make this work. It was really, really sweet. So that was neat. Dad was great. He was he was a driven guy. I mean, he gets a hold of something and he goes. And he came out here. It didn't matter about the liking wine. He learned to like it, and he started tasting and educating. I remember the first wines were Louis Martini's Zinfandel. He thought that was the coolest thing, and we're like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And became quite a connoisseur. By the time he died, and but it was mostly it was the business thing. Everything he had researched said this thing is going to pop, and it did. And I got to tell you. Even 10 years later when I started working here, 73 we moved, 83 I moved here. The 80s, there were minimal California wines in New York on the East Coast. I mean, it was all Eurocentric, and it was tough to get it to sell our wines. And in this 30 or 40-year span, the wines from California, from Napa Valley, I humbly, I think we're on the world stage, and that's really cool to get there in 40 years, and also to have wine be, well, I'm preaching to the choir. You guys wouldn't be watching this unless you drank wine, but I mean, wine's around, people drink it, it's on the table, it's lunch or dinner if we ever go out to lunch or dinner again. So I've witnessed this whole transformation, and it's been really cool. And Napa Valley, we got here fast because we all share ideas, and that started with Robert Mondavi. I went over and spent an hour with his cellar master when I first started at Schafer. I didn't even know the guy. And someone said, go see Brad Warner if you got questions. I went over there with a legal pad with 30 questions. I didn't even know who this guy was. He spent an hour and a half with me, answered everything, and gave me a bunch of tips. And when we're done, I said, why'd you do this? You're like, I'm not his competition. I was just starting out. But he said, Mr. Mondavi said, we share everything we've learned with everybody. And they walk the walk, and it was great. I'm rambling here, but that's what happened. And man, to get to making top quality wines, not just myself, but everybody around here in such a short span of time is really cool. My relationship with Dad was father-son. I had two relationships with him. I had the father-son relationship, and I had a working relationship with him. It's funny you ask that because I haven't thought about it that way. I think the two kind of blended totally together. I was never super tight with him, through high school and college. Even when I was home at Christmas, when I taught school in Tucson for 2 years, and I decided I was going to come back to Napa. It's a funny story. I was home for Christmas break. I still had 6 months in Tucson. I said, well, Dad, I'm thinking about coming back to the Valley. This is 1981. So he'd been making wine a couple of years. Had just built a winery, had a winemaker. I'm thinking about coming back to Napa. And he goes, okay, that sounds great, but I don't have a job for you. Well, which was really kind of funny because I wasn't even thinking about working with him. I mean, never even dreamed of it. He was just starting out. Schafer was not Schafer. I looked at him and said, I don't want to work for you. He goes, good, just so we're on the same page. So I got a job at, another place working in the cellar. And then a couple of years later, he said, come on over. He actually had to talk me into it. And then we had 7 years together building this winery. And it was really cool. He was 100% supportive always with myself and then Elias, because Elias was here within a year of me starting here. And the three of us, I mean, my memories of standing in the lab every morning trying to figure something out during harvest, the three of us, how are we going to make that fit and get that picked in time. It just, at that point, he was already into his 60s, and it was a ball of fire. And then he had to go out on the road and sell wine. And my early wines, they were okay, but there were nothing to write home about. Dad's out there trying to sell the stuff. God bless him. I'm indebted to him forever for that. And, but he always supported us 100%. He would speak his opinion without a doubt. He would respect ours. And the three of us, or the two of us, would come to a meeting of the minds. We never really had any of this thing you read about with families. Because I remember having interviews with press people, and they'd say, well, how's it going with your dad? It's like, well, it's going fine. And they said, come on, really, tell me, how's it really going? In other words, they were looking for dirt. I was like, man, there's no dirt here. We're just, everything's fine. Even when we disagree, it's fine. We come up, we figure out what we're going to do next. And then when he turned it over to me in the mid 90s, even though he was here every day and doing lots of philanthropy and things like that, it was my show, totally my show. People would go to him and say, hey, John, what do you think about this or that? And they go talk to Doug. It's his call. And that was very apparent and truly wonderful. So I don't think I could be that generous with a kid, especially when the kid was as young and green as I was, but he trusted and let it go. So I was really lucky. Yeah. Oh, and 1.5, that's the name of the cab. It's 100% cab, Stag's Leap District, real rich, soft wine. It's a 2017. Name speaks to the family business. He started late in life, second career. I joined him early. So instead of 2 full generations, it was 1.5. So hence 1.5. And I vowed I would never bottle it in magnums because of all the confusion when we first came out with it, but we do now bottle it in magnums. So you can get a 1.5, a 1.5.
I love it. Well, sounds like an amazing man, and some tough love at the beginning, sending you to find a job elsewhere, but just a wonderful.
It was easy. I didn't want to work for him.
I love the Cabernet. And so this is sourced from, the photos that we just saw, will just be to the south of the building there.
Right. I didn't have specific pictures of different ranches, but at the opposite, this little valley we're in, we're up at the Box Canyon in the north part. Right at the southern part, we've got 25 acres, 30 acres of Cabernet. We call it borderline. So it's like, it's less than a mile away from the ranch, the home ranch. And that's the majority of the cab for 1.5 comes from there. A little bit from this ranch. And then I've got 2 or 3 growers right here in Stag's Leap we purchase grapes from. So that's the source.
While we do have the 17 cab that we're talking about, we do have a question from Rob. And I know you could probably talk for, the whole hour on this, but can you just give quick insight into how 18, 19, and 20 have looked in terms of the wines that we'll expect to see from those vintages?
18, 19, 20. 18 was every 10 or 12 years, we have one of those years where it's like, oh my God, the fruit won't quit coming. That block was supposed to be 10 tons. It's 16. That block was supposed to be 20. It's 28. It's like, holy shit, where are we going to put all these grapes? And sometimes when it's heavy like that, the quality can be like a little, it's okay, but it could be better. 97 was the same way. It was monster crop and it was all really, really good. So it was like pick of the litter. We had we sold off a lot of bulk that was gorgeous stuff, but we just didn't want to bottle that much wine. So 18's really good quality, really pretty. 19's good too. It wasn't as big. 19 was like way normal, which was a break, and the vines needed a break too. So 19's are solid, which is great. So both years are really good. 17's were good, I think. And then 20, unfortunately, we didn't pick any grapes in 20. So that's in close to 40 years of being in this business, that's something that I never have had happen, and I would have never dreamed it would have happened, but it happened because we had a lot of exposure to smoke, and we know what that's all about. So it's just like, it wasn't even worth it. So it's been you guys, on top of COVID and the pandemic and not picking fruit in 2020, it's like, it's been a long year. We live for harvest. We spend all year long nurturing these vines and pruning them and planting them and getting the cover crop right and fertilizing them, and then through the season, irrigation and suckering shoots and adjusting crop loads to just get the best grapes we can get. And you do all that, and all of a sudden you say, we're not going to pick it. I mean, even my field guys, it was horrible because they're like, because they're the ones busting their tails all summer long last year. But it's March and it's a beautiful day, and I showed you just like those pictures saw, and we've got bud break in Chardonnay and Carneros, which means it's time for a new season, rebirth, renaissance, and you turn the corner, you go. So 18 solid, 19 solid, 21's going to be really goddamn good.
Well, all the more to go ahead and stock up on 18 and 19. And we'll revisit in 21. I didn't realize that, Doug. That is so tough.
It was tough. It was tough. And just, some people might have questions about the 2020, so I should speak to that.
Yeah.
Because I'm your man on the ground here. So anytime you want to know, just, dial me up. 2020 was a tough go in a lot of areas out here. Does it mean every 2020 wine is bad? No, it doesn't. What you have to realize is there are a lot of grapes were picked before there were any fires. Sparkling wine, piece of cake, that was in. Most of the Sauvignon Blanc was in. And I think a lot of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir was in. So if you've got a producer that's got a 2020 wine, don't just go, no way, I'm not going to touch that. That's not fair, especially if it's somebody and you like their wines. At least you got to try the wines, you guys. So try them. And if they're solid, go for it. If they're questionable, you don't trust it, then don't go for it. That's fine. But don't just write off. My concern is when stories like mine come out, that the consumer is going to say, oh shit, I'm not going to touch 2020 ever. That's not true, and that's not right. And even, you can't even, okay, 2020 California. Well, that's not fair. There's a lot of areas in California that were fine in 2020. So, but I've seen it happen on the East Coast, and people were like, all of a sudden they were not even touching 2020 European wines just because in their head there was something bad about 2020. So that's my sales. That's my sales pitch. This is my public service announcement.
A little bit of one more kind of geeky question here for you. Someone asked about the water table this year. How's that doing?
I don't know, because I don't know how to check the water table. So because it's out of sight, out of mind. No, we've had a dry year. It's no secret. We had about 2 inches of rain the last 2 days, which was just glorious. And the creek started running again, which is great. But it's too late in the season to make up all the water that we need. So we are definitely in a dry year situation. And we've been here before. Most of my ranches have wells. I actually had them tested all last year, at the end of summer last year. And they were all hanging in there pretty good. So I think we're doing fine. It's not a crisis. Is there a concern? Sure it is. But there's always a concern when you're a farmer. There's something, whether it's a pest or a bug or too much rain or not enough rain, so we'll be fine.
So you've mentioned Elias now many times, and we were able to see a couple of photographs of him. So I do want to transition to his time now as winemaker at Schafer, and do that by switching over to the Relentless, which I believe the first vintage of this was in '99. So maybe we can start with kind of its origin. And by the way, Doug, I want to share, we have Donna here on that. She's so excited to be here, and she opened a bottle of the 2013 Relentless. So she's having that vintage with us, and a couple others as well. So start with the kind of the conception of Relentless and your thoughts on that, and really Elias kind of taking over the reins.
Well, Elias is, he's a perfectionist. He is, I would bet any amount of money we've got the cleanest cellar in California. The place is spotless. He is relentless. He's basically, he does his homework. He's prepped. He's always prepped. He's got backups in place. Not too many things surprise him or us anymore because we've been through so much and figured out how to do it. But loyal, incredible winemaker, great palate. He's, I can't say enough about him. Actually, so back when we came out with this wine, we got into Syrah, and the two of us cooked up this idea of planting a vineyard, basically 20% Petite Syrah, 80% Syrah, and just make a field blend and make the wine. And we went to my dad and pitched the idea because we were all really excited. It's back in mid-90s. And he goes, "Oh, you're talking about a new product." And Elias, I go, "Yeah." Now remember, Dad's background was corporate America and, corporate, the whole corporate thing. He goes, "Well, new product." I go, "Yeah, I guess." He goes, "Well, guys," I'll never forget this conversation. "Well, guys, when you try out a new product, you usually want to test the market." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, you don't want to go deep. You just want to make a few hundred cases to see if people like it, Because we had this 18-acre hillside vineyard that was just perfect for it. So he's like, "Oh, a couple hundred cases. Jesus, that's you're planting like an acre, then you got to wait. You got to wait. We want it." So we were kind of like, "Oh, really?" And then he kind of paused. And he looked out his window. He looked at us. And he goes, "Yeah, but you guys have been doing pretty good lately. So go ahead, go for it." So I was like, "Yeah." So we planted this 18-acre vineyard just south of Stags Leap, top of the hill, and planted it was a 20% Petite Syrah, 80% Syrah. And people say, "Well, how'd you come up with that blend?" It's like, we just thought it would be really cool because we love Syrah, and Elias had a lot of experience with Petite Syrah with some buddies up in Calistoga. So we went for it, and it made the blend 80-20, and it was gorgeous. Just this big brooding wine, which it still is. It's gotten a little more finesseful, I think. And we were going to name it. I wanted to honor Elias. So at the time, and to this day, he is known, our purveyors have a nickname for him. They call him the Junkyard Dog, because if you know anything about a junkyard dog, it's like a picky, tenacious, get what you want. So I was going to call it Schafer Vineyards Syrah Junkyard Dog Ranch. And I was going to tell the story about what a junkyard dog Elias is. And I basically got voted down. So I couldn't use that because my staff, it's unfortunate. It's kind of a democracy here, which is a problem for me sometimes. But I got voted down. And so instead, we've named the wine Relentless to honor Elias and his relentless pursuit of quality. That's why we call it Relentless. And the blend has shifted through the years. It used to be 80-20. It's more, this one's actually exactly 90-10, 90 Syrah, 10 Petite Syrah. And that's usually where we are these days. But it's incredible color. It's rich. It's got wonderful concentration. The tannins have gotten a little softer over the years. It used to be a pretty bruiser of a wine in the back end. And well, he's done some things. It might be the age of the vines being older, just a little softer. But it's not a shy wine at all. But it's Syrah, and we love Syrah. So that's the story.
Yeah. It's that perfect concentration of, it packs a punch, no doubt, but it's just that balance between the savory elements with tons of fruit. and tannins that are no doubt there. But yeah, I mean, they're soft enough for sure to kind of invite you in. So I love it. I have to side with your staff on this. I like relentless as the name, Chuck.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, that would have been a bad move. So
a couple of questions here for you. Firstly, Nicholas asked, back at in Tucson, what were you teaching at that time? Was it wine related or?
Oh no, no, I was teaching, a good question. I was teaching junior high school, math and science, coaching basketball, soccer, softball. I was 23. It was a gas. I love teaching. People say, why junior high? I said, I wanted junior high because you never know what's coming in the door every morning. It was just a gas. So I really enjoyed it. And it was great because a lot of my students have stayed in touch through the years. So, and they're only 10 years younger. So 23 to 13, that's a big gap. But 53 to 43 isn't that big a deal. So it's been fun. They stopped by. Hey, Mr. Schafer. Pretty funny.
Another question for you from the audience. Was there ever a temptation to jump on the rosé bandwagon or follow any other wine trends? Big question, especially on that last one, but thoughts there.
It's a great question because we get tempted all the time because we get a little tired of making Cab and Chardonnay all the time. Rosé, honestly, never got tempted to do that one. I almost did Pinot, and that would have been a mistake. I had a friend of mine really set me straight on that one, so that was great. We've got plenty of different flavors. I wouldn't want to have any more than we have right now, because at that point you start to compete with your other wines if you've got too many ones that are similar. So we just stick to what we're doing, and I'm comfortable with that now. There was a time 2 years ago I was probably more anxious to try new things, but I think that's tough from a business point of view. I think if we want to try new things, we just do it on a garage level, just homebrew.
Yeah, which means we'll have to get out to your tasting room and maybe try some of those experiments. Which is another question, real quick. Just any talk of when you all might reopen? We got some people wanting to visit, I think.
Yeah, it's starting to open up. It's getting a little wild out here. I gotta tell you guys, I'm on that conservative side. I just am, and my staff appreciates it. So we are closed. We've been closed for a year. We do not have an opening date at this point. I just need to be totally comfortable so that my team was totally safe, because we've got people coming in. They're pouring into the valley now. They're coming from all over the place because I think there's a thought that Napa's safe, and we're no safer than anywhere else. So it's kind of a false impression, which is a little bit frightening right now. And we're going to take a look at in 5 or 6 months and see where things are going. And once we open up, we'll put it on the website and off we go. But yeah, for now we're staying closed.
Yeah. Very smart. So questions keep rolling in here, so I'm just going to keep firing away if that's all right, Doug. So Joe has asked how old most of your vines are, if you can speak to that.
Average age is probably 12 to 15, 16 years, average age. These vineyards out here, my experience, you got a vineyard that gets to 22, 25 years old, we usually pull it and replant. My European fellow vintners think I'm insane. They think I'm crazy, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, that's our experience. You got an old vineyard, you've got virus, you've got disease. It's tough to get uniform ripening, which can take away from the quality of a wine. So we usually pull it and replant. And on the flip side, first crop, third or fourth leaf, first good crop, we pick it and use it. It's great. Again, my European counterparts are like, Doug, are you kidding? You cannot use grapes for good wine until you're 10 years old. It's like, no, bullshit. Some of the best Cab. That 78 Cab was one of the best wines we've ever made. That was the fourth leaf, first good crop. I have seen it time and time again. That's my place. I know my place. If I was in Europe or somewhere where it was a different deal, I'd be doing some things differently, but not here, man. So.
This from Fake Briar Patch, love the name. Are you happy with the decision to end the Merlot program and roll it into TD9? And made the comment that they always thought your Merlot was remarkable.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was a big call. We made Merlot for a long, long time, known for it. And it was a great wine for us. It still is a great wine. We grow Merlot and we make Merlot, and it's a beautiful wine. And what we do now is we put it into a blend. So it was a throwaway comment Elias made in 2015, which was a really short harvest. If you want to know the story, am I going on and on, Alicia, too much? Is this all right?
You're great, Doug. You're good.
6 a.m., middle of harvest, almost done with harvest. 2015, it was a light year. Elias, we're in my office having a cup of coffee, talking about the day. I'm going to go sample here. He's going to sample there. I've got to get a truck down there to that guy. He doesn't have a truck. You know, doing what we do every day at harvest. And he's in a foul mood. And he's in a foul mood because we're coming up short on Merlot, because it was just everything was down. And when you have a short year, Merlot is really short. And he's no dummy. If we don't get so many tons of Merlot, we're not going to have enough, so many cases, which means distributors are upset, which means the consumer's upset, and everybody's upset. You got to have grapes. But he's bitching and moaning about Merlot, you know, and, you know, but, you know, he hasn't had any sleep, so I'm just letting him go. And he leaves, he's walking down the hall. Right before the door slams at the end of the hall from my office, I hear him go, he goes, you know, if we didn't have to call it Merlot, I could nail production every year and it would be a better wine. Now, what he meant by, to be Merlot, it has to be 75% Merlot grapes in that bottle to label it Merlot. So if he didn't have that restriction, he could get the cases we need every year, no sweat. And then that last comment was it could be a better wine, meaning he could blend it to be a better tasting wine, not being held to that 75% Merlot deal. So he said that, and a little light bulb goes off in my head. And I was like, So I tucked that one away. 6 weeks later, we're having lunch. Harvest is over. He's gotten some sleep. I said, hey, remember that comment you made? He goes, yeah. I go, you still feel that way? Better wine? He goes, piece of cake. I said, show me. He goes, no problem. And off he goes to the lab. I've forgotten about it. I'm on the phone with some insurance guy. 2 hours later, he calls me up and says, come on over. I go to the lab. He's got 2 glasses red wine for me, 2 for him. They're blind, A and B, A and B. Now, those of you who think when we get together and blend, we have a white tablecloth and it's a beautiful conference room and we have beautiful stemware and carafes of all these different wines, we blend them. No, we don't do that. We just stand at the counter in the lab and we just go for it, okay? It's not that romantic, it's just down and dirty. And so left glass, smell, right glass, smell. He looks at me, I look at him, I go, left glass, way better nose. He goes, yeah, me too. And we taste, spit, taste, spit, taste, spit, taste, spit. And he's looking at me, I'm looking at him. I'm not going to talk because he's got a way better palate than I do. And I go, he goes, nope, you go first. So he was like, God damn it. I go, okay, I'm going in. Left wine, all day long, better mouth. And then he said 2 words that changed the fate of Merlot at Schafer Vineyards. He said, me too. And then I was like, okay, holy shit, we agreed. Now, what you have to know, in 30 plus years of making wine together, the times we have agreed on a blend, the first shot, have been like 5 in 35 years of making wine, okay? Because we never agree. It's like, no, you're crazy. So now it was like, what's in the left glass? Well, the left glass was the blend, and the right glass was going to be what the 15 Merlot would have been. And so I looked at him, I said, better wine? He goes, yeah, what are we all about? I said, making the best wine we can. Let's do it. So he and I made the decision. Then we walked over and told my dad and my sales guy. And they're both there. And they both fell on the floor. I said, we're doing this. You know, let's come up with a name. Let's come up with a story. And it's a better wine. So now we can nail production every year. And it is a better wine because he's got total freedom. More Malbec, more Cab, less of this, more Merlot, depending on the year. So that's the story behind what's now called TD9.
Yeah.
Long answer.
No,
whoever asked the question, sorry about that.
Way to go, Elias. That's great. And just so you know, Rob has said that please tell Doug we love these stories, and it helps him learn more and feel closer to the wine. So it is appreciated for sure. Just two more for you, Doug, if you don't mind. Real quick on the replanting, are you buying kind of new genetics or doing messal selection? Because you're replanting so often, you get to make those decisions more frequently. Have those, what is your approach, and has it changed at all?
Well, it's evolved through the years because the big issue is quality of planting material. And there's nurseries that do the blow up of rootstocks and cultivars, the varietals. And there's some strict protocols at these nurseries to make sure, it's called FPMS certified. Don't ask what it stands for, but that's something, whatever it is. But it's basically UC Davis protocol with these nurseries, testing. It's just like, Jesus Christ, it's just like virus testing. But no, it's like COVID testing, but with plants. So basically testing to make sure you don't have viruses or any diseases in that raw planting material, because there's stuff out there, because you don't want to put in a disease vine, because then you've got to replant in 3 or 4 years instead of 25 or 30. So that's the big difference. Getting quality planting material is key. And sometimes you have to wait. You might have to wait an extra year to get, make sure you've got enough qualified stuff to plant.
Sure. We will end with this about your favorite wine in your portfolio. And I know that the answer will be about, as every winemaker says, that it's they're all their children and you can't pick one. But perhaps frame it as what are you going to have when it gets to 5 o'clock, Pacific time? What do you find yourself holding?
That's an hour away. I'm close.
Yes.
Oh, the children thing, I don't use that because I do have a favorite child. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've got 5, and there's always a favorite. It's just what happens. I've told them this too. It really upsets them. I say, you guys, but the favorite changes all the time. Today it's him, today it's her. Of our own portfolio, that's really tough. I like them all for different reasons. Man. But yeah, I got to go with Hillside. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's really, really good. And again, another story. I forget how good it is, because usually when I'm tasting it, I'm selling. I'm in a trade lunch. I'm doing a tasting at Binny's at the bar with people, and I'm usually engaged in talking and telling stories. And I'm not really, I'm tasting my own wine, but I'm not really appreciating it. And I rarely, if ever, order it in a restaurant because it's too expensive and I'm pretty tight. Plus, it's also tacky. I'm not going to go in a restaurant and order my own wine to the guy. I'm going to order something else. What's not tacky? It's just like not what I do. The times where I really love Hillside is usually, sometimes I'm home alone, whatever reason. Kids aren't home, and that's not home. And it's like, I'm on my own for dinner, no problem. So I pick up a burrito. I can't cook to save my life. So I grab a burrito or a pizza on the way home. It's like ball game's on or something, or some show I'm Netflixing on. And it's like, I'm going to the wine closet. It's like, it's like a bottle of, 2010 Hillsides. Oh, shit, might as well have, let's have that. Open it, sitting down, my burrito, smell it, taste it. It's like, oh man. And no one's there but me and the TV and my burrito and maybe the dog. So the Cody's there, my dog. I go, Cody, Jesus Christ. And Cody looks at me. I go, God, this is really, really good. And then I sip it and taste it. It's like, it's just delicious. And it's just like, I love that moment because it's just, there's none of the stuff. It's not a winemaker dinner. It's not some wine spectator tasting. It's just, oh man, it tastes good. And I know what goes into it. I know what we do to grow those grapes and make that wine. I mean, spare no expense. And it's nip and tuck and go hard to get that wine. And, then the taste of 8 or 9 or 10 years later, it's like, God, it's delicious. So yeah, I guess that's my favorite wine. Not that I've gone off like that.
I love the story. Just imagine you there with the burrito and 2010 Hillside. So
Can't beat it.
perfect.
Can't beat it, man. You know.
Well, Doug, thank you so much for your time this evening and for all the amazing stories. I'm sure I speak for the audience. We learned so much about you, your dad, Elias, the whole kind of Schafer crew there, and your philosophy and outlook. So thanks for the great wines. Binny's always appreciates it. And I will throw up a slide here with the wines that we tasted tonight. If you want to repeat a burrito and Hillside experience, you can do that too. We sell Hillside. Visit your local store. But Doug, thanks so much again. Really appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to take off. Alicia, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us. I appreciate it. Hope the Cubs are going to have a good year. I'm still a Cubs fan. It's killing me. Still a Bears fan. It's killing me. I'll see you guys around. Be good. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye, Doug.